In the dry season of 1986, 15 children climbed aboard a school lorry in the early morning mist, laughing, clutching cloth-wrapped snacks, and swinging their arms with the innocence only children possess. They were headed toward a field trip near the sacred forest by the edge of Lake Mororo, where elders told stories of spirits and ancient rites. But they never returned. No crash, no twisted metal, no trace. The forest had swallowed them whole, as if the earth itself had closed its mouth. For nearly 4 decades, their names hung in the village like smoke after a fire, never spoken aloud, yet never forgotten. Then, one sweltering June morning, deep within the tangled roots of Morning Lake Forest, a buried skeleton of a bus was unearthed by a construction crew preparing ground for a new health post. And inside, incredibly, impossibly, someone was still alive. A woman. Eyes like the lake before a storm. And what she remembered would break open an old wound the land had tried to heal in silence. What really happened to the children of Halisa? Before we begin, hit subscribe and join us on this journey into a mystery that was meant to stay buried. Help us give voice to the silenced and make sure no name is ever forgotten again. Lana stepped inside the half-sunken bus, her boots pressing into layers of dirt and time. The floor groaned beneath her, not just from age, but as if the past itself resented her presence. The air inside was heavy, stale, and still. Sunlight filtered through broken windows and narrow beams, illuminating specks of dust that danced like restless spirits. At the front of the bus, she found it, a paper taped to the dashboard, aged but legible, a class list written in the joyful, swirling penmanship of Miss Delaney, the homeroom teacher who had vanished along with the children. 15 names, all between the tender ages of 9 and 11, were listed like sacred offerings, but scrawled underneath in a hand much darker and erratic, written over in thick red marker, were the chilling words, "We never made it to Morning Lake." Lana stumbled back, out of the stale tomb, and into air that suddenly felt colder, thinner. The cicadas had stopped singing. A solitary bird called from the trees, not with song, but a sharp, urgent cry. A warning, the kind of sound the elders used to say meant the ancestors were watching. She turned to the foreman, her voice hard and clipped. "Seal off the site. No one touches anything. Not until the state team arrives." "Yes, ma'am," he said, already backing away like the ground itself might open up. She looked once more at the buried relic framed by towering pines and unspoken stories. They were meant to return after 2 days. Instead, they became dust beneath the roots. But someone had survived long enough to leave a message, long enough to ask the question that had haunted the soil for years. Where did they really go? Back in Halisa's old records hall, a crumbling brick building whose walls still bore colonial paint, Lana stood beneath slow-turning ceiling fans, their blades whispering like gossiping spirits. The scent of mildew mixed with harsh lemon cleaner, and time hung thick in the air. Her fingers tapped a restless rhythm on the counter as the archivist returned with a brittle box wrapped in tape. Field Trip 6B, Halisa Ridge Primary, 19th May, 1986. Closed after 5 years. "No leads," he said solemnly, sliding the file toward her like it carried a curse. She carried the box to a quiet desk, its wood faded from decades of sun and silence. Inside were black and white photos of the children, smiling, full of joy. A list of what they had packed: toy drums, cloth dolls, flasks, beaded necklaces, cornmeal cakes. At the bottom was the official report stamped in red. Missing, presumed lost. No evidence of foul play. That stamp was a lie, a wound dressed in denial. She sifted through the details, her heart tightening with every faded name. The driver, Carl Davis, had come from outside the province. No roots, no family. Gone days after the disappearance. Never found. Then there was the substitute teacher, not Miss Delaney, who was reported ill that week, but a woman named M. Atwell. No one remembered hiring her. Her listed address was now nothing but weeds and termite-chewed wood. She, too, had vanished. Lana leaned back in her chair, the box opened before her like a forgotten shrine. She stared at the class photo, children lined up beside the very bus now buried in red earth, smiling, innocent. She traced her finger over one familiar face, Nora, the girl with sky in her eyes and beads in her hair, who always carried a yellow journal and believed trees could whisper back. You remember their names too, don't you? They must not be forgotten. Tap follow. Share their names. Let the forest know we're still listening. Kelly, wide green eyes, a missing front tooth, and a pink ribbon forever tied in her thick curls. Her name alone struck Lana like a drumbeat echoing through bone. Nora Kelly had once lived 2 homes down in a house with blue-painted shutters and a mango tree in the front yard. As girls, they'd shared icy orange popsicles on the roadside curb, bare feet dusted in red earth, giggling under the heavy sun of Halisa's summer months. Now her face, frozen in a fading school photo, looked back at Lana like a dream. Her chest tightened. Something ancient and sorrowful stirred in her soul. A knock at the door broke the spell. Deputy Harris stood there, eyes too wide. Sheriff, you need to see this. 15 minutes later, they were at the district hospital, a clay-colored building tucked between acacia trees, its painted sign faded from years of sun. A woman had been found. A fishing couple had spotted her stumbling barefoot along the muddy edge of the river near Morning Lake. Her clothes were ragged, not of any known local brand. Her feet were cut and bleeding. She was gaunt, sunburned, and silent. But she was alive. In the hallway outside the exam room, a nurse in a bright wax print uniform pulled Lana aside. She's stable, the nurse said in a soft tone, as if afraid the patient might hear even through the walls. No ID, says she's 12 years old, but she appears mid-30s. We assume trauma. The nurse hesitated, then handed Lana a clipboard. Then she told us her name. In trembling, unpracticed handwriting, it was written, Nora Kelly. Lana's legs wobbled beneath her. Her fingers dug into the wood railing. She says she was on a school field trip, the nurse added gently, and that she's been trying to get home. Ever since. Inside, the woman sat upright, cradling a cup of water with both hands like it was a sacred offering. Her hair was tangled, her frame fragile. But when Lana looked into her eyes, green as the village's wild papaya leaves, there was no mistaking her. Lana stepped toward the bed slowly, as though approaching a ghost. Nora, she whispered. The woman blinked, her eyes filled with tears. A trembling smile lifted the corner of her lips. You got old, she said, her voice cracked and soft. A single tear slid down her hollow cheek. Lana's throat clenched. You remember me? Nora nodded slowly. You had chicken pox, she murmured. You were supposed to come too. Tears filled Lana's eyes, hot, uninvited. She lowered herself into the chair beside the bed, speechless. She reached out but stopped short, unsure if touch would break the spell. They told me no one would remember, Nora whispered, that no one would come. Lana's voice was barely audible. Who told you that? Nora looked past her, toward the hospital window where dusk had begun to paint the sky in deep golds and purples. Then she turned back. We never made it to Morning Lake. The sun had dipped behind the baobab trees when Lana returned to the sheriff's outpost, a small building where case files were stacked like termite mounds. Golden hour filtered through bamboo blinds, casting long lines across the floor. She didn't sit. She walked straight to the whiteboard. That morning it had been empty. Now it bore the weight of memory. She wrote each name with care, like a mother calling her lost children home. 15 names, 2 neat columns. Above them in red marker, Morning Lake Field Trip. 19 May 1986. Below a new heading, Nora Kelly found. May 5th, 2025. Near Lake Mbororo, believes she is 12 years old. No memory of what happened. Repeats, we never made it to Morning Lake. Lana circled Nora's name. Where had she been? What had she survived? And more terrifying still, where were the others? That night, by the soft light of a kerosene lamp outside the hospital's rural wing, Lana returned to Nora's side. She found her wrapped in a hospital blanket, staring at a paper cup of water like it held secrets. Hi again, Lana said gently. Nora looked up. Her face was pale, her lips cracked, but something in her voice had changed. It held shape, memory, pain. You believe me, don't you? Lana nodded, eyes burning. I never stopped. I do, Lana said softly. Nora gave a sad, crooked smile, one that seemed too old for her young eyes. Most don't. Lana eased into the chair beside her. Can I ask you something? Nora nodded, slow and hesitant. Do you remember the bus ride? Nora looked down at her lap. Her fingers trembled against the scratchy hospital blanket. Only the beginning, she murmured. The driver, he wasn't our usual man. He didn't say much, but there was someone else. Lana leaned forward. Someone else? Nora's gaze drifted toward the shadows in the corner of the room. A man. He was waiting at the fork in the road, near the river path. I remember his beard and his voice. Do you remember what he said? Lana asked gently. Nora's voice fell to a whisper, barely more than breath. He said, the lake isn't ready for you yet. You'll have to wait. Lana's body tensed. Goosebumps rose like thorns across her arms. What happened then? He got on the bus, Nora replied. And after that, everything went quiet, like the forest had swallowed sound. I don't know what happened next. I just remember waking up in a place that looked like a barn, but it wasn't a barn anymore. She paused. Her voice cracked as memory clawed back through layers of silence. It was like a house made from forgotten time. The windows were all boarded. The clocks ticked, but none of them agreed. They told us it was always Tuesday, even when it wasn't. Lana's expression tightened, but she stayed quiet. They wouldn't let us speak about before. No old names, no memories of home. We had to choose new names. Names they gave us. Who were they? Lana asked, her tone low and steady. Nora's lips trembled. There were 2 at first, a woman and the man. She called him Mr. Avery. I don't think that was his real name. She disappeared one day. Got sick, I think. Do you know where that place was? Lana asked. Nora shook her head. They moved us around, sometimes in vans with curtains on the windows. We weren't allowed to look out. They said the world had forgotten us, that it was better this way. Lana's silence grew heavy, like thunder in the distance. Some of the others forgot, Nora added, her voice more fragile now. They forgot about school, about parents, about sunlight. But I didn't. I never did. Lana slowly reached into her coat pocket. Her fingers fumbled until they found it. A small, worn photo, laminated from years of care. She slid it across the tray between them. Nora picked it up with shaking hands. Her breath hitched. That's me, she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. That's Caleb. And Marcy. Her voice broke. She held the photo to her chest like it was a talisman. You kept this? I never stopped, Lana said, her voice barely audible. That night the village air grew cooler. The stars hung like stories in the sky. Lana sat alone in her old pickup truck, parked beside a forgotten barn on the county line road, a place swallowed by overgrown weeds and time. The barn stood crooked under the moonlight, its walls dark with age. She remembered something Nora said about clocks that lied and windows covered in secrets. This place once belonged to a man named Frank Avery, a reclusive farmer who died in 2003. But he had a son, Martin Avery. His last known address had long faded from the county records like ink in rain. Lana stepped out of the truck. A warm night breeze rustled the dry grass. Somewhere nearby, a nightjar called, its eerie, mournful cry trailing through the dark. She moved cautiously toward the barn. Her flashlight cast long shadows that danced across the walls like restless spirits. Something caught the light near the foundation, something metallic. She crouched low, brushing away tall weeds and broken twigs. A bracelet, plastic, faded, etched in blocky, innocent letters, K-I-M-I. Lana's breath caught. Kim Leong, one of the 15. A quiet child who loved cartoons and wrote her name on everything, like it was a spell to keep herself from disappearing. Lana stood slowly, her fingers clenched around the bracelet. Her heart pounded like a distant drum. The earth was giving up its silence now. The past was no longer whispering. It was screaming. When she returned to the station after midnight, she didn't switch on the bright lights, just the desk lamp, its amber glow casting a quiet halo across the old wooden surface. The room was still. The world seemed to hold its breath. She placed the bracelet next to the class photo. Her eyes traced over each child's face. One more found. But how many still waited? Lung. She had been 10 years old, wore thick round glasses that kept slipping down her nose, and had once buried toy dinosaurs in her grandmother's courtyard, hoping they'd fossilize. And now, found here, beside this ghost-ridden barn, a bracelet tangled in weed roots, whispering her name like a prayer. Lana's fingers clutched the receiver of the old landline, the cord stretching taut with urgency. She dialed the number for the Texas Missing and Unsolved Cold Case Unit, her voice steady, though her heart felt like it might shatter. She left a full report request on Martin Avery, son of the late Frank Avery, and any of his known contacts. She didn't expect a reply until dawn, but her gut wouldn't rest. Not with ghosts pressing their palms against the windows. Not with the dark pressing close, like the night itself remembered what she was only beginning to uncover. By sunrise, the morning lake site had awakened into a quiet storm. A second team had arrived, this time from the state's Historical Preservation Division. But Lana could feel it. This wasn't just a dig anymore. This was sacred ground now. The still air held a strange charge, like thunder hiding beneath the soil. People whispered as they worked, as if afraid to wake the silence too loudly. Lana stood by the back of the rust-eaten bus, arms folded, watching the forensic team like a mother hen eyeing vultures. Her body ached from sleeplessness, but her spirit was wired, alert. The ghosts had stirred something in her, and they weren't going back to sleep. "Sheriff!" A voice broke her trance. It was one of the lead investigators, a man with quiet eyes and square glasses that kept fogging under his mask. He held a sealed evidence pouch aloft. "You'll want to see this." She crossed the clearing in a few swift steps. The tech handed her the pouch gently, like it carried something alive. Inside was a photograph, curled slightly at the corners, but not weathered like something 4 decades old. "Where was it?" she asked, frowning. "Wedged behind the metal frame above the emergency exit. Freshly placed, I'd say, not aged with the rest of the wreck." Lana slipped the photo out. Her breath caught. A group of children stood lined up in front of a wooden structure, rough, weather-beaten, its windows nailed shut. The image was faded but clear, Their faces were blank, empty, not smiling, not sad, just hollow, like masks waiting for emotion. She recognized them instantly. Marcy, Kimmy, Caleb, Nora. And there, in the shadows behind them, barely visible, a figure stood, a tall man, face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, his beard merging with the darkness around him. His presence wasn't loud, but it clung to the image like a stain. Lana flipped the photograph. Scrawled in black ink, just two words, The Chosen, Year 2. No date, no location, just a declaration. Back at the station, the photograph took its place on Lana's growing shrine of fragments. Scattered names, timelines, maps, half-memories. Her fingers hovered above the words, Year 2. That meant it hadn't ended when they vanished. It had only begun. She unrolled a county map across her desk. Every old barn, lodge, missionary post, and summer retreat ever linked to the Avery family. One name pulsed at her like a heartbeat. Riverview Camp, an old children's retreat at the edge of the National Forest, last sold in 1984 to a private trust. The paperwork after that? Gone. Scrubbed like it had never existed. The camp had vanished off the grid in the early 90s, buried under the canopy of trees 30 miles from the dig site. She circled it in red ink. That afternoon, Lana sat beside Nora once more. The photo, The Chosen, rested in her palm like a wound. The moment Nora's eyes landed on it, her fingers began to tremble. Her breath grew ragged. Her chest heaved as if all the years she'd buried deep had clawed their way to the surface. Her voice was barely a whisper. I remember this. This was after the first winter, Nora said softly, her voice drifting like smoke through memory. They made us pose once every season to show progress. She touched the photo gently as if it burned. That building, she hesitated, tears welling up. It's where they kept us the longest. Lana leaned in. Do you know where it is? Nora shook her head, slow and heavy. They never let us outside without blindfolds. Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. But I remember sounds. A river close by. A whistle at sunset. In the air. It always smelled like burning pine. Something clicked inside Lana's mind like tumblers falling into place. Riverview Camp, name for the great river bend that curved like a serpent around the hills. And the old logging train, the one whose whistle used to echo through the forest at dusk, like a ghost mourning its own passage. Lana gently turned the photo and pointed to the figure in the shadows. Do you recognize this man? Nora's fingers trembled. That's not Mr. Avery, she whispered. That's someone worse. Lana stiffened. Worse? They called him Father Elijah, she said, bitterness threading her voice. But he wasn't a priest. He just liked the sound of it. The name wrapped itself around Lana's spine like ice. Her fingers curled against the edge of the table. What happened to him? Nora stared at the photograph, her voice barely a breath. I don't know. One day after year 3, he just stopped coming. Then we were moved again. Different place, different rules. She swallowed hard. Some didn't make it. Some, her voice broke. Some forgot their own names. Lana reached across and placed her hand gently over Nora's. But you didn't forget, she said softly. You came back. Nora gave the faintest nod, eyes distant. But they're still out there. Some of them. I feel it. She looked up, locking eyes with Lana. The others, they don't want to be found. That night Lana drove north. The road thinned into gravel and shadows. The trees pressed close on either side, their limbs twisting like silent watchers. Fog curled at her tires, low and restless, like it remembered every secret buried here. Then she saw it. A rotting sign, barely hanging by rusted nails choked by vines. Riverview Youth Retreat. Private land. She parked just beyond the tree line. The silence hit her like a wall. No birds, no breeze, not even the call of insects. Just the faint hiss of water whispering in the distance. She took her flashlight and stepped onto the overgrown trail, boots crunching dead leaves. The trees loomed around her like the ribs of some long-dead beast. Then, there it was. The building from the photograph. Its roof sagged like a broken back. The porch was a patchwork of rot and shadow. But the walls were the same. That strange siding, blackened at the edges. The windows still sealed from the inside. She stepped forward, heart thudding. But just before the porch, she froze. Footprints, small, recent, a child's. Her hand went to her holster. Her other gripped the flashlight tighter. "Hello?" she called, voice low and calm. "Anyone here?" Nothing. Then from deep within the bones of the house, a sound, a soft creak, then a whisper. "You're not supposed to be here." Lana's pulse hammered. The whisper wasn't frightened. It was almost playful. She stepped onto the porch. The wood groaned beneath her weight. Another whisper drifting from within. "She came anyway." The door was cracked open, just a sliver. No locks, no chains, no sign of recent force. Just the smell, thick and sour, earth and metal and years gone stagnant. Lana nudged it open with her boot. The hinges shrieked softly. Her flashlight swept across the interior. Dust-thick air, skeletal remains of old furniture, the shape of shadows that refused to leave. And then she saw it, carved deep into the far wall. Names, children's names, some scratched in light, rushed strokes, others gouged with violence, over and over, like they were trying not to forget. Kimmy, Marcy, Elijah, crossed out, Caleb, Sam, a question mark beside it, J.N., Nora, 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 3 times, one beneath the other. Lana's throat tightened. This wasn't a hiding place. It was a prison. She stepped forward, the beam of her flashlight flickering. Her boots stirred the dust of children long gone, but not lost. Every shift of his small frame. He stared out the window as the last light of dusk fell behind the trees, casting the woods in a dusky blur of silhouettes. Lana watched him in the rearview mirror, trying not to press him, though her mind raced with questions. "Do you know where the others are?" she asked quietly. Jonah didn't answer at first. Then without turning, he said, "Some got away. Some went with him." "Him?" Lana prompted. He nodded. "Father Elijah. He said the world forgot us, that we were chosen to start over. But some of us remembered. That made him angry." Lana's hand clenched around the steering wheel. "And the ones who stayed?" Jonah hesitated. "He didn't let them go." Lana's chest tightened. She reached for the radio, calling in a welfare check on the property and requesting backup. She didn't know how many more were still out there, or what else they might find. But one thing was clear. Whatever had happened at Riverview Camp had never really ended. We were being saved from something worse. That the outside world had failed us. And this was a second chance. Lana sat across from him, her expression unreadable. "But it wasn't salvation, was it?" Aaron's eyes dropped to the floor. Not for most of us. I see that now." She leaned forward. "There are others, still missing, still afraid. Some might still be alive." He nodded slowly. "I know. I think about them every day." "Then help me," Lana said firmly. "Help me find them." Aaron looked up, and for the first time his mask of calm cracked. "He'll come back, you know. Elijah, if he isn't already watching." Lana didn't flinch. "Then we'll be ready." The silence between them settled like ash. In another room, a chess timer ticked faintly, as if counting down something no one could name. The past was no longer buried. It had been waiting. Aaron looked down at his hands, the silence thick between them. I believed we were building something pure, he said quietly. A place without the chaos of the world. Father Elijah said we were chosen, set apart. Lana didn't move, her voice even. And the children? Aaron flinched. We were children too. He broke us before we knew we were broken. Some of us became like him. Some of us tried not to. Lana stepped forward, laying the photograph of the campfire on the table. You stayed, but now you have a choice again. For the first time, Aaron's mask cracked. He's still out there, he whispered. He never left. He just waits. Later that evening, as the sun bled into the pines, Lana stood outside the station. Inside, Jonah slept curled in a blanket while Nora sat beside him, humming softly. The photo wall behind them had grown, names and faces no longer forgotten. In Lana's hand was the bracelet marked KIMI, the plastic dull and warm. She slipped it into the evidence bag, then into the lockbox. Tomorrow the search would expand. Riverview's woods, Avery's records, whatever lay beneath the silence. But for tonight, she let herself feel something she hadn't in years. Hope. Somewhere in the trees, a wind stirred like breath. Watching, waiting. But this time it was not stronger than the light.